Hello, your photographer and narrator Fred Rackle, and I'm going to show you my filming of a fabulous volcanic eruption on the Big Island of Hawaii. The eruption of Kilauea, seen here first from the air, and the shaking shows the high turbulence of that air. And then several hours later, after landing and driving to the volcano area from the crater rim. Both scenes on the first night of eruption, November 14th, 1959. We're seeing the outbreak halfway up the side of this 600-foot deep crater, the lava fountaining to about 150 feet and growing. A lava river will be forming at the base of the crater, which will become a lava lake before too long and grow higher and higher each day. By daylight, we have more detail and better oriented to the area and the activity. The sun has a very sulfurous appearance, a weird sight at midday with the high rising clouds. This crater, which has not erupted in 92 years, is heavy with vegetation, soon to be covered. That second outbreak on the left will not survive. The right side will survive and grow. On the second night of the eruption, we decided to descend lower into the crater, using a trail at the Byron ledge end of the crater to work our way down, and taking scenes as we go from different angles. Some of these are by telephoto lens, but as we work lower, we have to use normal and wide-angle lenses because of the closeness. It's spooky going down here because we just don't know what to expect, but it's exciting, for we know we're having a rare opportunity for most unusual coverage. This is to be an on and off eruption for yet another month, and will have become one of the most beautiful eruptions Hawaii has ever seen, and a once-in-a-lifetime visitor's attraction. We're on the floor of the crater now, and looking up, yes, up this time, at the growing fountain, and the output from that V formation, which is pouring this fast lava river out and onto the valley floor. This outpouring between 20 and 30 miles per hour, and by the color and fluidity of same, we judge the temperature to be about 2,000 degrees. Look at the blurbing here in the stream. Large boulders there are causing that upheaval. Back to the vent and the increasing volume being put out. The river is so very fast, both because of the fluidity and the downhill movement, and it seems now like the source is unending. What a beautiful sight, don't you agree? Fantastic. And so very, very fast. I'd photographed other volcanic eruptions over past years, but never had such variety of fast-moving action. Dawn is breaking now. We've climbed halfway up the steep side of the crater, looking back down at the area where we'd been during the night. In fact, lava is now overrunning that same area, and where we'd taken the scorching close-ups earlier. We're thankful it didn't take that same course while we were down there. Looking now to several areas where more rivers are outpouring a large volume of lava toward the lower crater floor. Here's one looks like a waterfall, a red waterfall. Here's another with a pool. Very dramatic. From the Volcano House, a hotel several miles distant, we see halfway out to the crater to get a better view. This is now a full-grown volcanic fountain with tremendous volume, likely 10 times that of the first several days. The center being white-yellow indicates a temperature of likely 3,000 degrees. The darker blobs on the outer rim are cinder and ash, burned by the high heat, to be carried high and blown downwind to blanket the landed area. From the Byron overlook at night, we're seeing a new height, estimated at 1,500 feet, and with great width and increased volume spraying clear across the 1/2 mile wide crater. Much of this fallout is landing on the other crater rim. Later this night, from another vantage point closer to the fountain, we think it is higher yet, and we're told that the Park Service rangers have triangulated this new height to 1,900 feet. This is now a new record breaker, for never before have Hawaii's volcanoes fountained to such height. You'll have noted that the fountain has trees framing the foreground. These are the hardy ohia tree, not readily burned, though the leaves and trim will burn off before long. We photographers could be badly burned if we didn't wear clothes covering most all skin, plus being very careful. We're seeing much of the splashing filling into the lava lake, now estimated at about 200 feet and slowly rising. And the splashing and filling go on and on. As we look around the base, there are no longer rivers. It is all one huge lava lake, and the cone itself about 100 yards across at the base. On the other side of the crater, we're very close to the huge vent. The tremendous heat is buffeting those hardy ohia trees, and it won't be long before such heat will have burned off the foliage. We're very close now and looking up into the towering lava. This is a massive, a giant fountain and a giant cone with ever-increasing volume pouring onto the lava lake. Splashing down at the base, and the lake is risen to a reported 300-foot level. Compute this 300 feet with the 1/2 by 1.5 mile size of the crater, and we have an unimaginable amount of captive molten lava. Some blobs are being thrown over the area and land in the brush, starting small fires. We do wish you could hear the sound at this point. It's a deafening thunder, and you must realize that in 1959, portable tape recorders had not yet been developed, and movie sound equipment much too bulky for my rapid position changes. We're looking close into the fountain now by telephoto lens, and it makes one almost dizzy watching this flak-like action. What a tremendous speed and force. If you hadn't seen the preceding buildup of the volcano, you'd hardly recognize this as lava, would you? Back on the far side of the crater again, and the fountaining is lessening a little, though still putting out good volume. We're seeing it here fanning out onto the lava lake, with much of the black on the surface being partially cooled and being broken into by the force of newer entry. Looks like a slithering snake there in the center, doesn't it? Further out onto the lake, with the surface looking like a giant fan, and with much of the cooled black surface being pushed further back. An awesome sight, this giant lava lake. The volume and weight of this is unusually higher than that of most volcanic eruptions. More lava splashing at the base of the cone, adding to the ever-increasing volume. Here again, our great giant snake. At the time, we called this a snakeback. Back at the Byron Ledge end of the crater, we're seeing a different perspective. The fountain, tall and huge again, still very high, at 1,700 to 1,900 feet. Framed beautifully again by the now more desolate ohia trees. Isn't that a most beautiful scene? And again, we look at the more increased volume at the base. This time with lava thrown further out, literally bombing onto the surface. Interesting to watch. Let's go back to the vent side once again for closer action. Seems like every time we return to a viewpoint, the action has changed. Close in once again, about 75 yards from the fountaining vent, and the awesome volume cascading out onto the ever-growing lake. Just beautiful. You'll note much of the fallout now is being thrown back toward the cone. Here, looking over the guardrail along the road and closer to the vent, is a super close view of the fast ejection of lava. Again, I regret inability to tape the sound. It is roaring this night, and we had to shout to be heard. Very hot there also. The fountain is not only high, but seems more powerful tonight. The ohia trees are losing all foliage, and the ground rumbles and shakes here close to the cone. The very scenes you're viewing now were the last with my Bell & Howell camera, as in the very scenes you're seeing. We taken the film roll out of the camera to load another roll. Both the camera and tripod went over the gusty edge. Here's a viewing area again where visitors are brought in by rangers, the fountain being only a half-mile across the crater. They enjoy a good view there. Now for a dramatic close-up where no visitors can go. Back over by the vent, again in daylight, closer and closer, looking directly up into the blasting lava, with the direction of fallout changing and blowing the force over toward our camera position. It's coming in now like bombs, and we have to be extremely watchful that we don't get bombed. Now the thundering mass does come too close for comfort, and we stick it out till the very last moment, getting ready to turn and run. Oh boy, here she comes. Get out of there. Start turning. Shut the camera off. Haha, go for it. Here's the most beautiful night scene as the fountain puts out a fan-like shape with pulsing waves. Very unusual, even peaceful appearing. We had a young Hawaiian girl over with us this evening to model the part of our legendary fire goddess, Madame Pelly. She loved it and even relished the light burning she received sitting there on the fence. She's enjoying the chance to be so close to all that beautiful action and will never forget it. Now from the far rim, let's take a count. We're into the 6th day of continuous eruption, and it seems like it will never stop. We wonder what would happen when and if the lava should overflow the top rim. Meanwhile, though, the activity has stabilized to a point of having attracted visitors from all over the world. The fountains have had many dramatic changes, and you're about to see a major change now, as the fountain becomes less high, very wide at the base, and is extremely high in temperature and fluidity. Looking directly into the fountain, we're blinded by that lighter color, and closer into that below. We have waves now coming off of the heavy output. Note here the fluidity of this molten lava, somewhat higher in temperature, and so the breathtaking wave action. But our volcano is soon to die, and as we see the fountain lowering, we just weren't ready as it did die, and we suddenly had a huge glowing cinder cone, with huge blocks of the glowing cone breaking off and falling back into the vent. Eerie silence now, except for the sound of the big clinkers falling. It's 7 days since the start, and we think the whole eruption is over, but we're to have 12 or 14 such deaths and rebirths before the final ending. Under the partial collapse of the cone, we note a drain-back action starting, as much of the lake surface is moving back and into the same vent from which it had been explosively thrown hours or days before. An estimated 20 to 30 feet of the entire lake will drain back before resumption will reverse the pressures. A few days later, we're in the air and notice that the activity has resumed. Looking toward the 1/2 by 1.5 mile crater, you now have a most inviting perspective, and will note how perfectly the lava lake is contained, the main part of the lake being there on the upper left. Roads in the area had been for the most part closed, but look at the traffic now. Convoys might be started again here. From the grounds of Volcano House, 3 miles distant, the new outbreak is noted, and the word goes out. Resumption is most welcome news. Back at the crater rim, at the Byron Ledge end of the crater, where the desolation is most apparent, and with tremendous heat yet throwing smoke and pumice skyward. Yours truly taking a rim shot here, and as many scenes stepping back, leaving the camera running, especially for dazzling scenes such as this. Blinding, isn't it? Once again, the fluidity and temperature are exceedingly high, and putting out the beautiful wave-like action. Note the many subtle color changes here as the waves form and roll. Even the volcanologists marvel at this type of action. Most unusual. From the new fountain, which is some 1,200 feet, we'll pan our camera around to the right toward Byron Ledge. then around toward the main Kilauea crater, across from the rim of Kilauea Iki, and further to the right rim of Iki, which had been overthrown with lava bombs, and most of the ohia tree brushed off. We call this area Spatter Ridge. Looking back toward the fountain area, we find that it has died again, very briefly and after only one day of activity, and the drain-back action started once again. This goes on for several hours and then several more hours. Very slow swirling. Isn't that beautiful? We enjoyed this serenity. The next day started a small resumption of activity with low blurbing of lava, only to heights of about 50 to 60 feet, very high in volume, and started again to fill out onto the lake and appearing as a new lava flow overrunning the surface, but which will break through the older crust with its weight. Now our blurbing is rising to perhaps 100 feet for a short time. Now for a most unusual scene. You're about to see an explosive growth to 1,400 feet, all within about a half a minute. We were most lucky to have our camera growing on the fountain as it took this tremendous burst skyward. Up and up she goes and stays there. Wow, that's a real rebirth, huh? Lucky shot. And we're back with a huge fountain once again. Seen here from the Byron Overlook where only a few spectators have seen the rebirth. What a tremendous volume again. And the lava lake will quickly regain the height lost to the drain-back action. Down she pounds on the wall of the huge cone, splashes far out onto the lava lake. Here's our little Madame Pelly once again, risking burns on her arms, but she's excited and just loves it. The giant fountain continues high, and again we wonder if it is here to stay, though we are becoming used to the deaths and rebirths of this magnificent volcano. We're showing you here only a few of the many times this phenomenon took place over the month and week of eruption, but being well representing of this type action. We appear now to have a lessening of pressure, noted by some collapse of the cinder cone wall. And so we expect another dying phase. And so it will, following these scenes of more heavy splashing out onto the crater, pounding along the base of the cone, a real barrage of molten fury, reaching far across almost to the other side of the crater. But the fountain goes lower and lower, and over the next 20 minutes or so, the pressure is further reduced. As we look and wait, now only a light blurbing remains. Over the next hour, even that dies down to almost nothing. This is a really slow death as it seems to hang on without draining back action starting. Then the cinder cone shows a most beautiful collapse, falling all along the wall, and the drain back action starts again below. A little different this time, for it appears like ice going over rapids in a fast river. Red ice, huh? The black cakes are, of course, the crusted over surface, just cooled enough to have lost the glow. Some out in the middle of the lake break up and go down. With the activity seemingly over, visitors are hunting here. All along the rim, we have the visitors looking for olivine. That's the semi-precious stone that comes up with the lava bombs. Take a little risk there tripping, don't they? What a beautiful cinder cone now, about 400 feet high. And after a full day of rest, our event has started with a slow blurbing again. By now we know what to expect. We're looking the other way, taking lake scenes, as the fountaining started again, and we pan around toward this new fountain, showing a pretty orange color in the morning light. Then we'll pan further around toward the narrow end of the crater, passing Kilauea Flats, Halimau, Spatter Ridge, the visitors' viewing area crowded again with each renewal of activity. They're looking directly across the crater to see the action. Most beautiful, full-grown volcano again. Here now next morning we have a change in the direction of the fountaining lava. It is greatly slanted as we think perhaps part of the vent has collapsed and is redirecting the force. This causes complications at the vent, for the bombing is once again covering the road at that area. We call this type of scene scorching close-ups. Yours truly leaving the area before he gets bombed. Get out of there, Freddie. Here's a most beautiful fountaining again that is not too high, but once again with that unusually high temperature and fluidity, and again bringing forth the dramatic lava waves to roll along over the lake surface. Isn't this fantastic? We're spellbound enjoying this most beautiful action again. Look at the color changes caused by the temperature differences. Looks like you could really enjoy surfing down there, don't it? Haha. This most liquid kind of action is again indicative that the eruptive phase is soon to end. And so again we note the reduced height and pressure. We're getting lower in the fountain again. And though at the time we don't realize it, this is almost the end of the fountaining activity. And I mean, of course, the ending of this entire eruption. We've shown you only a few of the 12 to 14 bursts and deaths. In fact, official records show 16 starts and stops of this fantastic eruption, but several more were only alive for a few hours, and I for one didn't count these as phases. But believe me, all colorful and hot, and what you've seen represents all the phases quite well. The cinder cone walls again have that dramatic collapse. As to coin a phrase, the walls come tumbling down. Yours truly on the edge over toward Byron and looking back at the drain back. This goes on for some time. The immense lake is now 400 feet deep, though we'll lose a little, perhaps 30 feet or so draining back before the event chokes off. This will be the last drain back of this 1959 volcanic eruption. We're looking down on the crusted over lake now with many different effects apparent, where the hottest lava is coming from, and the fluidity, and the time it takes to cool, and the way the drain back action reforms the surface, as well as the volume of drain back. The smoother surfaces we see are of the faster moving, more fluid pahoehoe lava, the more crumbly ragged formations being either the slower moving lava or pahoehoe broken by intense pressures. Steam belches up from the lake in different areas, from intense heat below, and you may be interested to know that the volcanologists and scientists will be taking test cores over coming years to determine the depth of crust relating to the molten but degassed lava below. We're at the Thurston lava tube end of the crater now, and we're going down the trail at this end to photograph scenes at the lake level. Much of this end is of the smooth pahoehoe, but with the sections of more rough lava and the crumbling edges left from the drain back action as each phase ended. This can be walked on if careful not to break through, and of course, we don't trip. Very pretty here along the sides with the broken up pahoehoe. Yours truly is going for a little walk now across the lake to the vent side where we lost the camera over the edge in the earlier action. But it's smoky and hot. We never get there. Too hot on the feet, and we have to move along quickly to get back to the lesser hot sides further up along the edge. We had one film sequence at this time cooking bacon and eggs, but it was decided not to include same with this taping. Believe me, it was interesting. More of the crustacean along the sides of the crater. You've no doubt seen tree molds. Well, here's how they're formed. The molten lava wraps itself around the hardy ohia tree, and then it cools just enough to become semi-hard before the tree is burned away. This leaves a tree mold. Aha! With the eruption now considered over, rangers are letting visitors over to the area where the road had been covered by the cone and fallout. This is where we've been getting some of those scorching close-ups. What a beautiful high cinder cone. This will be an area landmark and a great attraction far into future years. Miles of surrounding area are covered with several or more feet of pumice fallout. The Crater Rim Road junction partly covered too. Amid the widespread desolation, rangers walk along one road, which has been bulldozed to use again. We're finding one of several rest camps here with a good covering and a heavy pumice load on the roof. Ranger checks that out for safety. The library seems to have survived. Ha ha ha! The roll's there. Rangers checking out the entire area now, planning road and trail accesses for the countless thousands who will later enjoy the most beautiful aftermath of this Kilauea eruption of November-December 1959. Thank you for looking and listening. Enjoy.